Phendrana drifts. Welcome back to more Let's Play Metroid Prime. Last time, here we continue to explore Phendrana drifts, doing a lot, and I mean a lot, of reading, namely on a bunch of juicy Space Pirate lore. We also obtained the almighty Super Missile, and today, we're going to ideally put that to use as we continue to explore Research Station Hydra. So, hopefully, if I pay attention to the enemies in front of us, we'll be able to get through with little to no worries. But even just knowing that we have the Super Missile is quite nice, and access to Control Tower granted. Please step into the hologram. Well, sure. But even knowing that we have the Super Missile, while it would probably behoove us to use the normal power beam, we're going to need the wave beam for so many doors here that frankly, it's probably best if we just continue using that, because one charge shot and a missile usually deals with most enemies. So, it's good to keep in mind. Looks like we have some new friends to play with. A rather annoying enemy at that. New creature entry. Morphology, Flying Pirate. These are pirates trained and equipped for airborne assault. Flying pirates are extremely agile in the air, but the heat signature of their jetpacks can be tracked with thermal imaging. While their missiles are extremely potent, their jetpacks can be even more so. If the pack fails, they will make a suicide strike. Hey, 50% of all logbook scans downloaded. Very nice. That means we're doing quite well. So yeah, these guys are some of the most annoying enemies in the game, because even after you've taken them out, they still try to damage you one last time. They are obnoxious. And frankly, one of the easiest ways of dealing with them is to just hit them with a Super Missile. Because as you saw, although I kinda missed, the Super Missile also happens to have a bit of a lock-on property similar to the Wave Beam. It's not the strongest effect. It is very possible you are going to shoot a Super Missile and totally miss with it. That is not unheard of, but it at least is a nice little bonus for you if you do try to use them. So maybe don't rely on it, but it might surprise you with how often it comes in to actually help. And if you notice, up here, we have ice covering an opening. That, of course, can be melted with extreme heat. This is something you will need to remember for later, which, luckily for you, will have to do plenty of backtracking through Phendrana already, so just add it to the list of things. After all, we've seen so many things that are going to need heat that, frankly, you're going to be coming back here regardless of what you do. Otherwise, looks like we're going back on down. Which I will say, in Metroid, I always loved these little elevator moments. They've been in every Metroid, including the first game. And while they probably served more as a chance for the game to load, I always thought the elevators were so fun and interesting, just because sometimes Samus would have little monologues in them. Namely, Metroid Fusion had these, but even in things like, say, a cutscene. Here we have our first look at the thing the series is named after. A true blue Metroid. But, continuing what I was saying, it's kind of cool getting to see a new area based solely on just what it looks like from coming down in an elevator. The color change, the music change, everything. I always thought it was really nice. New creatures been added to our logbook. Morphology, Metroid, energy-based parasitic predator. the dominant species of planet SR-388. Metroids can suck the life force out of living things. A Metroid will latch onto its prey and drain energy, growing larger as it does. The only way to shake an attached Metroid is to enter Morph Ball mode and lay a bomb. So yeah, these little things are a bit annoying to fight. Now in traditional Metroid, in order to even fight a Metroid, you normally would require the Ice Beam. But because the game doesn't give it to you right away in this game, it's not required in order to fight them. You can fight most Metroids with any beam and combination of missiles. But generally missiles end up being the dominant way to fight them, but it's nice to know that you still stand a chance and aren't just screwed because you don't have the Ice Beam. So that's at least comforting. And unfortunately, there is a lot to read here, but I want to clear out the room so that way we don't have to listen to the battle music the whole time while reading. Just one of those annoying little things. But should be all fine and dandy. Because frankly, there's not too many enemies in here if I'm remembering correctly. There we go. And of course, there will be more Metroids, but that's fine. We are plenty equipped to deal with them. And if you notice, after taking so many hits, they end up growing a little larger regardless of them sucking on you. So they're a bit of a strange enemy in that regard. And if you notice, they completely ignore missiles as a base attack. So they're a bit strange to deal with. And it looks like most of the music there has stopped. And don't you worry, I saw that missile expansion, but we'll get him in just a moment. After all, we've got reading to do, and lots of it. So, let's take a look. Metroid containment fields appear 100% effective after adjustments. Temperatures below 10 centigrade will render Metroids docile. Well, looks like that estimation of 100% was not quite correct. The hooked mandibles of the Metroid penetrate the skin of its prey and siphon pure life force energy. Internal organs of Metroids seem to be limited to nucleonic absorption cells and massive energy reservoirs. Metroid brain scan results in. Studies show accelerated activity in parietal lobe during hunting cycles at temperatures above 10 centigrade. New pirate data. Oh boy. Log 10.891.0. The reconstruction of Geoform 187, codenamed Ridley, was recently completed. After his defeat on Zebes, Command ordered a number of metagenetic improvements for him. Though aggressive, we were able to implement these changes in a cycle. The metamorphosis was painful, but quite successful in the end. Early tests indicate a drastic increase in strength, mobility, and offensive capability. Cybernetic modules and armor plating have been added as well. We believe our creation, now called Meta Ridley, will become the mainstay of our security force, a job he will certainly relish. So yeah, a lot of classic stuff in this room. Containment temperature stable at 3 centigrade. Environmental diagnostics satisfactory. Phazon Infusion, Stage 6. Subject, Metroid, is that 8 R5497? Subject's mass at 180% of previous Phazon cycle, increasing dosage by 4%. New pirate data, oh boy. Log 10.444.4. Initial transfer of Metroids to Talon 4 research facilities have been completed. 3 were terminated in an incident at the landing site, but the others were pacified and transported safely. Initial Phazon infusion testing is underway. We are eager to observe the effects of Phazon on Metroids, especially their ability to absorb and process the energy given off by Phazon sources. Early research suggests a considerable growth in power and size. Whether the creatures stay stable thereafter remains to be seen. As is with most things, it seems. And let's see right here. Stasis Tank 8118 contaminated beyond acceptable safety standards. Removal squad requested. And I guess that would explain why it shattered and broke. Otherwise, make sure we got every little bit of juicy info. Looks like we did. Ooh, missiles. Just what the Samus ordered. And let's see, anything else? Some energy. Nothing hurtful, at least. As energy-based creatures, Metroids show immediate mass increase upon energy absorption. And it seems with physical trauma, too. So, a bit interesting. And oh boy, more pirate data. Log 10.957.2. Confidence is high regarding Phazon applications. We know enough about Phazon now to begin combining it with space pirate DNA. The code name for this venture will be Project Helix. Preliminary studies indicate that Phazon infusion could produce radical new pirate genomes. Benevolent mutation levels are high in current test subjects. Phazon madness is a concern, but refinements in the infusion process should reduce or neutralize the odds of mental degeneration. Right. All guards must use ice containment gear when transporting Metroids. This includes sedated specimens and those pronounced dead. Directive. In the event of a Metroid attack, repel creature with missiles set to maximum concussion. So yeah, there's the game more or less giving you the in-lore reasons of why you must use both ice and missiles to generally defeat them. But sometimes things aren't quite so simple. Here we have one of many little ball areas, which to be fair, if you can take it slow, not too hard, usually. There we go. Another little missile expansion, very useful. I certainly know I like expanding my missiles. Looks like we can't break that open, at least not with the wave beam. Ooh. Now that, though, we certainly want. Missile, perhaps? Hey. Very nice. Extra energy tank is always appreciated. Empty stasis tank used for biological specimens. Latent radiation readings indicate extreme radioactive contamination. Right. Stasis tank C012 is contaminated beyond acceptable safety standards. Remove immediately. Oh, and this one we've already read, apparently. Sure. This tank holds the remains of Experiment 7526, conversion of elite pirate unsuccessful. Uh-huh. Elite pirate, you say? Well, at least it wasn't successful. New pirate data. Log 11420.7. Blaze it. Metroid dissection continues to provide more questions than answers. Our research teams have isolated the energy conduits that run from the invasive twin mandibles to the energy core in the creature's quadripartite nucleus. Bit of a strange word, but sure. But the manner in which a Metroid actually extracts the life force from its prey remains an utter mystery. The victim does not lose blood or any other vital fluids, and yet the Metroid extracts energy. Identifying this energy is our central problem. It takes no physical form, and yet without it, the victim dies. We will continue to research this matter, as the isolation of this life-giving essence could be the key to our ascendance. Also, I like how I went out of my way to clear out the enemies, and now there's just an alarm buzzing the whole time. Not great, but, well, we did what we could. Quarantine specimen exhibits highly aggressive behavior. Its body structure, composed of Phazon ore, appears nearly invulnerable. This has rendered our efforts to train and discipline subject useless. East Quarantine Cave has been secured. Specimen remains in the quarantine area. All experiments have been suspended pending pacification of area. Project Titan is suspended indefinitely. Security breaches resulting in massive casualties have occurred. Access is strictly prohibited until further notice. You know it. More pirate data. Very nice. Log 11.550.6. Studies of Metroid biology continue, though with limited progress. It seems likely that we will be much more successful using the Metroids for our means rather than trying to reproduce their powers. If they could be adequately tamed, we would have no need of a proper understanding of their metabolism. A small force of disciplined Metroids could wipe out entire armies, and once we find a way to shield them from cold containment weapons, they will be invincible. Furthermore, if we could then harvest the energy they'd consumed, we would have a near limitless source of power at our disposal. So, as you can see, the Metroids are quite the versatile little things, and needed for quite a bit in the eyes of the pirates. Metroids infused with Phazon strain Vertigo are thriving. We feel they could be Class 1 energy harvesters if proper submission measures are employed. So yeah, it seems that while they are finicky at best, it seems Metroids are not only incredibly dangerous, but possibly very useful. Hey, I need to scan you. Because you're a new enemy! The Ice Beetle, burrowing insect with an ice-reinforced carapace, adverse to heat, or averse to heat, not adverse. This member of the beetle family has adapted to life in the sub-zero temperatures in the Phendrana drifts, growing a thick ice shell over its entire body. The ice is extremely resilient, providing the ice beetle with extra protection and augmented digging abilities. Huh. So yeah, as you can see, they don't flinch nearly as easily, and they dig pretty fast. But they're still just pretty much fodder enemies. They really don't take much to put down, and frankly, I wouldn't worry about them all too much. Thank you, game. And, whoa, this room's a little dark. What about you? Just a normal space pirate? Well, if you say so. Nice little charge shot from the wave beam missile. Do us pretty good. Oh look, more Metroids. How obnoxious. So frankly, I'm trying to conserve my missiles a little bit here, because I know we're going to want them coming up. Now honestly, if you're in a pinch, I would just go ahead and use them, but it's nice to keep a few. Thermal visor interfaces will be sent to quarantine area. These visors will be useful for any personnel involved in transport of the unstable test subject there. Huh. Central tank control circuit connection terminated. Ooh. Look at that. That seems like a nice new toy that we would very much so like to have. And let's see. Get some missiles back. Very nice. Looks like our next control panel is down below. Whoops. There we go. And pull out the old visor. Central tank auxiliary circuit connection terminated. Very nice. And what do we have here? Thermal imaging software exceeding initial expectations. Combat applications are being evaluated by command. Field testing in Phendrana region approved. Use of prototype visors by security personnel approved. Oh, looks like we'll be getting ourselves some of that thermal imaging, which, frankly, will be quite useful. At least assuming that it actually does have combat applications and that it works. As we've read, a lot of the pirate stuff doesn't work all that well. So, here's to hoping. Let's see here. Inform command that thermal vision tests will begin soon. Abnormal heat traces are represented as red when looking through the thermal imaging spectrum. So, good to know. Ah, central tank main circuit connection terminated. Well, well, well. Looks like we have ourselves a nice little upgrade. The thermal visor. One of, I want to say, my least favorite upgrades. I don't outright hate it, but you'll understand why I'm not a super huge fan of it pretty soon. Press down on the D-pad to activate visor. Use thermal visor to search for cold and hot objects and hidden wave beam targets. Additional data has been downloaded. And now that we have a new way to look, the game is going to make sure we need to use it. Because it is now almost impossible to see. And the game's telling us to use the thermal visor to detect enemies. So with it, welcome to purple vision. If you thought the wave beam wasn't purple enough, well, lucky for you, we have a whole new way to look at the game. Admittedly, this does look really cool. But after so long, it does get kind of annoying looking at the entire game through this lens. And another interesting thing, take a listen. With normal visors, there's no noise. With the scan visor, you have a little almost heart pulse kind of beat. And with this, you have what sounds like coordinates being read or something like that. And the only other thing I'm not really huge about this visor is the fact that it's this weird triangle shape. I don't hate it, again. It's certainly not something I absolutely dislike, but it does get old pretty quickly. So, if you don't like staring at this, well, I can't say I blame you. And obviously, a lot of the finer details of the game are kind of washed out completely by this visor. But again, it is really cool that at any point, you can just turn this on and look at the world in a whole new light, literally. It's honestly a really cool and impressive thing. So, I at least gotta give it credit where credit's due. I don't think there are a ton of games that had something quite like this. So, if nothing else, although it is rather purple and orange and kind of hard to see with, it's at least super interesting and really unique. I feel Metroid Prime, at least the first one, did a lot with that. It gave you super unique upgrades that you otherwise may not have ever thought about or have probably really seen in many other games. Now, obviously, thermal imaging is probably most common found in games like, say, ironically, Call of Duty, because there are a bunch of heat sensor things you can put on your various weapons. So, it makes sense. Otherwise, if you notice here, it's not something we can scan, but these right here are areas we can power up with the wave beam. And by shooting it, it'll activate a wire and power up things. And here, we have a new enemy. The Mechanoid Sentry Drone. Well-armed and armored security mecha. Security drones have limited intelligence, but do their assigned tasks well. Being machines, they are susceptible to electrical attacks. When alerted, drones initiate a security lockdown, then attempt to neutralize the intruder. Their electronic warfare suit can scramble visor technology as well. So frankly, these guys are just obnoxious. There's really no great way to go around it. They make it even harder to see than it already is. They're somewhat weak to electric attacks, that much is true. but they have a lot of health and do even more damage than you might like. So, I wouldn't exactly blame you if you don't like them. And, as you can see there, if an enemy doesn't have a heat signature, they're almost invisible in this visor. So while it is super useful for seeing the environment and other enemies that are otherwise hidden, it can also have the opposite effect with other enemies too, and hide them instead. So with this visor, you kind of just have to know what to look for. Normally the game will help you find these enemies with the lock-on, identifying things that your eyes may not have otherwise been able to. But seeing as the entire area is pretty much pitch black, you're going to need to be using the thermal visor. Now, for anyone who knows the game super well, you can absolutely get through these areas without it, but it is just more helpful and useful to use it. Now, another big thing that the thermal visor lacks, that the combat visor has, is the map in the top right and your radar in the top left. So if you're relying on those a lot to know A, where you're going, and B, where enemies are, the thermal visor is going to be a bit of a pain. Also, luckily for us, we can just skip that room. So the thermal visor, like all the other visors, has its ups and downs. This is pretty much one of the only sections of the game that you ever really need it for exploration, but there will be puzzles that involve using it to, say, open doors or do similar things, namely with those electrical locks. So if you're ever stumped and you find a door you can't open, give this visor a try. There's a very high chance that there's a heated circuit somewhere that you otherwise wouldn't be able to see through a wall. So I think it's a really clever item for puzzle solving. It's just, it isn't really used in too many areas. Especially because, I mean, as you can see, the darker or colder something is, the harder it is to see. So like in a room like this, it's not as easy to platform around because these, well, I guess platforms, for lack of a better term, aren't heated. It's also the fact of most mechanical enemies don't have heat signatures. So you can't really rely on it for too much. Still, where it is effective, it's very effective, which is nice. Also, that was weird. Because see, in rooms like this, super easy. But because you're lacking true color in the world, it is a bit harder to identify things. Also, if you didn't come back and grab that missile expansion, now is a perfect time to go do so, because it's right here. Still, most of what this visor is used for is just electrical puzzles. This is kind of the most you'll ever use it in the game, but again, it's still pretty cool. And, like I said before, if at any point you want to use it, feel free. It's always available. It's not like they're going to take this away from you or anything. So, if you want to just see what an area looks like in the thermal visor, or, I think more interestingly, if you want to see an enemy's, or, I guess, creature in most terms, if you want to see their heat signature and where the heat of their body is, you can do that. So, it's kind of a really neat thing, and honestly, I think a really cool detail that this game really was great at showing. I think that's one of the big strengths of Metroid Prime, is that most Metroid games are all about going fast and doing things as quickly as possible to get through the game, get all the items, beat all the enemies, but Metroid Prime has a very large focus on just exploring, learning, reading, and really enjoying things. So I think this kind of visor is a really natural fit, even if it's maybe not my favorite, just because you can take the time and really look at things up close, because it's a whole new lens to quite literally look at things. So even if it's not my favorite, there's at least still a lot to say about it, and it's a really interesting item. But as you can see, when you get out into places like this, it's kind of just purple. So if you're great at discerning shades of purple, it's a phenomenal item. And as you can see, anytime you see something that maybe stands out a bit, it is usually pretty obvious. Though this one's a bit weird, because it's hidden behind cordite, which if you remember, is what our handy super missile is used for. So not only are there usually circuits hidden behind things, but there's usually something in front of it to protect it. So even if you don't think to use your thermal visor for a puzzle like this, usually scanning the area will indicate that there's something there for you to find, which is pretty darn useful. And with all that out of the way, we can progress to somewhere new. After all, that's kind of the whole bread and butter of Metroid, isn't it? Find a new item, get somewhere else new? It's quite a tried and true formula, but I find that the game does pretty darn well with it. Also, here we have a really cool area where you're dodging bomboos in the morph ball. A really nice set piece. And in here, well, this looks like that big quarantine cave they've been talking about. And let's be honest, I think I'm gonna save that for next time we play I was going to say Super Metroid. For the next time we play Metroid Prime. Next time, we'll enter the door and see just what this thing they've quarantined is. I believe they referred to it as Subject Titan. So, as always, I'm Brad. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.